In the heart of Georgia, 1847, stood the Monroe Plantation, a vast expanse of cotton fields ruled by one of the South's most feared families. Beneath its grand facade of white columns and perfumed magnolias lay a world of pain, cruelty, and silence. Among the enslaved men there was one who stood apart, Elias, a quiet, literate slave taught secretly by a preacher's wife. He was known for settling disputes among the enslaved, for his sense of fairness, and for the haunting calm in his eyes. The others called him the judge. But the white men on the plantation did not like slaves who thought, and they liked even less those who spoke of justice. When the plantation's heir, Thomas Monroe, was found dead near the mill pond, his skull cracked open by a blunt object, suspicion fell not on his fellow white men, but on Elias. The overseer swore he had seen Elias near the pond that night, though no evidence was found. The trial that followed was a mockery. A room filled with sweat and whispers, a jury of 12 white men, and a trembling slave forced to defend himself with nothing but truth. Elias's final words were said to have chilled the courtroom. "If I die wrongly, then justice will not sleep. The judge will rise again." Within a week, Elias was hanged from the magnolia tree by the courthouse, his eyes fixed open, his lips curled into what one witness called a knowing smile. His body was buried in an unmarked grave, but his name and his warning would not be forgotten, because what came next could not be explained by any man of flesh and bone. After Elias's execution, the Monroe Plantation seemed to fall under a strange, creeping sickness. The crops began to fail, the soil turning black and brittle as if scorched from within. Livestock died without reason. But what terrified the overseers most were the voices. At first, the slaves whispered about hearing a man's footsteps pacing near the mill pond at night, slow, deliberate, like a judge in deep thought. Some said they saw a faint figure sitting beneath the magnolia tree where Elias had been hanged, his hands folded as though still holding court. The air would grow colder near that tree, even in the burning heat of summer. The overseer, a cruel man named Caldwell, dismissed it all as Negro superstition, but within weeks, his sleep was shattered by nightmares, the same one. Over and over, Elias standing before him in chains, whispering something he could never quite hear. One morning, Caldwell woke to find muddy footprints leading from the mill pond to his bed, stopping inches from his face. By then, fear spread faster than fever. Slaves refused to work past sunset. The Monroe family ordered priests, exorcists, even a voodoo woman from New Orleans. None could silence the whispers. One night, during a violent storm, a voice was heard booming through the wind, a voice that sounded like Elias's, echoing across the plantation. The judge calls for truth. The next morning, Caldwell was found dead, his head cracked open by the same type of blunt object that had killed Thomas Monroe. And once again, justice, or something like it, had been served. By 1848, word of the haunted plantation spread across Georgia. Locals began avoiding the Monroe estate. Even the Monroes themselves could not ignore what was happening. Samuel Monroe, the patriarch, turned to the church, insisting the family's only hope was confession. But what was there to confess? In a locked drawer, he kept a leather-bound book, the Confession Ledger, where he had written all the secrets that could never reach. Daylight, slave beatings, hidden burials, and the truth behind his son's death. Thomas Monroe had not been murdered by Elias. He had been killed by Caldwell in a drunken rage. A rage Samuel himself had covered up to protect the family name. But the guilt rotted him from the inside. Each night he'd hear knocking on his office door, 3 slow knocks, always at midnight. When he opened it, no one was there. But on the desk, he would find pages from the ledger lying open, always on the entry, about Thomas's death. One morning, the ink on those pages was found to have run red, as though written in blood. Samuel Monroe confessed to a local priest, but before he could deliver the ledger to authorities, he was found dead in his chair, his hand clutching the book. his face frozen in terror. The judge, it seemed, had read every page. According to witnesses, slaves, freedmen, and even townsfolk, strange gatherings began, appearing at the courthouse where Elias was condemned. On moonless nights, a dim light glowed through the boarded windows. Inside, shadows moved. People said they could hear a gavel striking, and voices murmuring, pleading. Some swore they saw Elias himself behind the judge's bench, his eyes pale and his voice calm, calling out names of men who had wronged others. Caldwell, Samuel Monroe, Reverend Hicks stand before the judge. One night, a group of drunk townsmen broke into the courthouse, mocking the stories. What they saw inside left two of them senseless. The place was empty, yet the air felt heavy, electric. Then, from the far end of the hall, the sound of chains dragging. The gavel struck once, then again. And in the silence that followed, one man screamed, claiming he saw a figure robed in tattered black, eyes burning white, pointing toward him. Days later, that same man confessed to having lynched a runaway slave years earlier, a crime no one had ever known. It seemed Elias's courtroom had no walls, no boundaries. His vengeance traveled through guilt and memory, judging not just the living, but the unrepentant. By 1850, the Monroe plantation stood abandoned. Those who passed by claimed to see the silhouette of a man standing among the cotton rows, watching, sometimes holding a book, sometimes a gavel. The landowners who tried to buy the property met sudden misfortune. Fires started without cause. Animals refused to cross the boundaries. Even the trees grew twisted, their roots shaped like hands clawing at the earth. On a summer night that year, lightning struck the old plantation house. The entire estate went up in flames, burning so fiercely that even the rain could not quench it. Witnesses said the fire burned in the shape of a scales of justice, glowing above the smoke. When the ruins cooled, they found something impossible among the ashes: the leather-bound confession ledger, untouched by fire. Inside, beneath the final entry, was a new line written in a hand no one recognized. Judgment delivered. Sentence served. No one ever moved back onto the land again. More than a century later, the story of the ghost judge still circulates through the South. Locals say Elias's spirit never sought revenge, only balance. Those who lie, exploit, or condemn the innocent are said to feel his presence near water or magnolia trees. Strange courtrooms appear in dreams, where a man with kind eyes and a cold voice asks only one question: do you stand in truth? Historians debate whether Elias ever truly existed. Some claim court records from 1847 were lost in a courthouse fire. Others say they were erased by powerful hands. But archaeologists have found fragments of burned ledgers near the old Monroe site, and the faint remains of shackles buried deep beneath the magnolia tree. In church sermons and folklore alike, his tale became a symbol of the enslaved spirit's unbreakable will, a haunting reminder that justice, though delayed, always finds its way. Even today, travelers near Monroe County say that when the wind moves through the cypress and magnolia, you can hear the faint echo of a gavel striking wood. 3 times before silence falls once more, the judge still watches,